Season 4 of the Humans and AI podcast is finally here. This time we're doing things a bit different. We're still chatting with incredible founders and leaders shaping AI, HPC and GPU infrastructure, but with a sharper focus on today. The roles they're in, the challenges they're facing, what's actually working and what's not. It's real, it's current, it's straight from the people building the AI ecosystem. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Cameron, thanks for coming. Really good to see you. We've been talking about you coming now for a little while, so it's good to get you actually in the studio. For the benefit of the audience, do you mind just doing a bit of intro as to who you are, what you're doing, and a bit about the company?
Yeah, of course. So Cam or Cameron Turner, I'm our enterprise pursuit lead at Softcat. So what that means is I support with the enterprise go-to-markets, help to develop new go-to-markets, create OEM, vendor connections, as well as support with customer engagements. So right now, primarily, let's say 99% of my time is spent focused on NeoClouds or NCPs, supporting them with building out their practices, looking at selling on their services into our enterprise customer base as well. That's somewhere where we're seeing this steady uptick in demand. So that's what's taking up a lot of my time at the moment.
Indeed, and quite frankly, one of the reasons why we wanted you on here today. So that's great. Look, Softcat is a business that I've known for many, many years, done a bit of work with in the past and know people in the organisation. Obviously, huge pedigree in the typical sort of IT managed services world. We've just talked about it. Been sitting in the top spot of the CRN 100 for quite a few years now. But let's go back because you've been there quite a while now, haven't you?
Yeah, been at Softcat best part of a decade now.
Yep.
So yeah, long time. Started my
But
career
too young
there.
to have done that, to be fair.
Yeah, I started my career there, literally in the graduate program, nurtured me all the way to, I've got to be honest, when I first went to Softcat, I kind of said to my partner, it's like, look, I know this is a really tough place to go and work. So if I last a year, fantastic. That's all I'm planning on doing. Last a year, and then you kind of flash forwards to this time and I'm still here and I'm keep still saying to myself 2, 3, 4 more years, like then I'll be done. And then it just keeps sucking you back in. I just think such a great place to work. I know I sound like a company man when I say that, but the culture really sucks you in and then makes it incredibly hard to leave.
Well, that's it. I think it's one of those organisations that you get exactly out of it what you put in, isn't it? So it really does sort of basically value and give reward for hard work and success. So, I mean, I know lots of people that have been there. In fact, I've hired people from Softcat, into my old company just because of the location where you guys were in Marlow, who lasted a year or two, and it gives a really good grounding. So that graduate program is probably one of the best, I think, from what I understand in the marketplace. What is it, other than the fact that it's obviously really hard work but teaches you all good things? What is it that makes it a success, do you think?
I think you ask different people and they might give you different answers. For me, one of the best things that we do with the graduate program is we give people so much ownership of their own career. So rather than, I think you look at other graduate programs and you're brought in to either do the dog's body work, for lack of a better term, or it's incredibly structured and puts you in these quite like specific boxes and forces you to work in those spaces. And don't get me wrong, I think one of the things that we've changed in Softcat over the past, it's 4 years now, is we've introduced our sales development program. So the graduate process is far more structured than it ever used to be. People get more support than they ever used to. We invest a lot more time and money in training, in line management, in creating the best managers in the industry, not just the best graduates as well. But while there's that, I suppose, box and bubble around you that acts as a support function, people are allowed to go about the job in the way that they want to. So I always find it so fascinating. You have these graduates come in, you might have intakes of 30, 40, 50 people at a time, and you could pick 5 people from the intake 6 months in, and they'll all be approaching the job in such a different way. So some will be using LinkedIn really effectively. Some will still be using cold calling, which we still find a great mechanism for breaking into accounts. Others will be great with emails or using tools like Cognism. It really varies from person to person. And I think we teach and trust the line managers to trust in their people to do that. So as long as they're delivering results from a gross profit perspective, from a revenue perspective, we do allow people the freedom to get about the job in the way that they want to, rather than telling them you have to do it in this way, which for me is particularly with a younger generation of people. And I say that still considering myself relatively young, aging myself on the podcast here, but I think nowadays people have much clearer idea coming into their roles of what they want to do and how they want to do it. And they expect to be given the freedom. And if you don't do that, what you then see is people doing a year, 2 years in the role and leaving, which is pretty expensive as a business if you're constantly allowing your new generation of people to leave.
Well, the value comes from them being able to put their own style, within a framework, but perhaps allowing them to express some creativity. And you're exactly right. I worked in an organisation for a number of years, and it was brilliant, and the training was fantastic, but it was very regimented. It didn't allow for creativity, and ultimately people kept on leaving. Some were really successful and stayed, but you probably lost quite a few high potentials on the basis that they were looking for something a little bit more. So the fact that you guys do that and have recognised that, and I've watched some of your videos actually, because as we've talked about, my daughter Lois is looking at finishing sixth form. She's trying to decide whether she goes to university or whether she looks at some kind of apprenticeship, and she's really in sales and marketing. So we've been looking at Softcat as a company.
I think it's such a good point, actually. We talk about it as a graduate program, and almost that in itself, like that lexicon is a mistake, because we don't just take graduates from university. We take people in apprenticeships. We take people straight out of school who are maybe a bit more mature and can cope in that environment. We've equally, say, 2-3 years ago, I began to really notice it on the sales floor, the number of people who were in their second or third jobs, and actually we'd gone from being this organisation where it was your first job in tech or first job in sales, and it was a place to cut your teeth. Whereas actually, as we've progressed and as our reputation across the industry has progressed, we've now started to attract people from different backgrounds. So people who might have 1, 2, 3 years of sales experience but want to cross over into tech, or people who've got a bit of tech experience but haven't quite found the right company for them. So that's been a really interesting thing, seeing going from purely recruiting graduates and being 99% aimed at universities to now actually having this really holistic approach to recruitment.
It is huge. And I think, like I say, if you look across the industry now, there's so many people that have either, have basically gone through that program at Softcat, and, some really strong leaders across the industry now that have worked there for a number of years. So it clearly is working. Obviously, for those that don't know Softcat hugely well, you talked about your pedigree and obviously some of the services, but do you want to go into a little bit more detail just about some of that sort of successes that you guys have had in the industry so far?
Yeah, of course. So we've gone from being, if you look all the way back to our inception as an organisation, we've gone from being solely a Microsoft licensed supplier. That's where we started. That's actually where the name Softcat comes from, for anybody who doesn't know. So it's software catalog. So that was originally what the business was called, software catalog. And then it was a bit of a mouthful, wasn't very special, wasn't very unique. So the founder decided to shorten it down to Softcat. So still today, that's the most common question I get asked. And it's also, to some extent, it can act negatively on us because people think we only do software. And so you find yourself constantly having to talk about our array of technology towers, as we call them. But yeah, today, if you flash forwards to our point where we are now, we now sell software, hardware. We've got a brilliant managed services division. And even within those collective categories, we define them into tech towers. So we've got things like hybrid platforms, end user compute, we've got our AI division, we've got Netcon, and we've got cybersecurity as well. So we've got this array of focus, which doesn't just actually look at things like security. Doesn't just look at things like software and hardware, actually groups them into pure solutions. And I think that's a massive reason for the organization's success. We're not just transactionally selling hardware that a customer has asked for. Commonly now, we are approached by organizations with a challenge or a problem statement, and we're expected as an organization to go and solve that problem statement. I would say that's one of the biggest transitions that we've seen in 10, 15 years. When I started, it was very much an organization would come to you and say, I need a server. Yeah. And I remember they gave us this A3 piece of paper that sat on your desks because the techies got so annoyed with salespeople like myself going, my customer wants a server. And they would go, yeah, but what do you want? What exactly is it? So they gave us these questions, and it would be as transactional as that. Go down these questions, fill in the answers, go back, that gets shoved into a computer, spits out, an HP or a Dell server, whoever it is. Whereas now, the organizations will come to you and they will go, got this awful challenge with engagement of staff. They hate their laptops. We constantly get negative feedback. Can you tell us how to go and resolve it? Or we want to start using AI in our core business model, but we have no idea where to start. Can you come in and help us solve that challenge? So yeah, it's been a real transition from that reactive transactional approach to where we want to be with the majority of our customers is trusted advisors, and where we want to be with our top customers is strategic partners. You can only do that across a few customers as well, be a true strategic partner.
It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, going in and selling services is great. It's also, sometimes it's the tip to a spear, isn't it? You get in there, you start getting that, you agree some kind of terms, you start having conversations, you can expand on the services and the offering. Going from that sort of transactional service to that sort of value business kind of conversation is amazing. And I think AI is an interesting one because, I know it was just a high level example there, but companies are saying we want to use AI as part of our processes, our systems. And that's such a difficult question to ask somebody, or certainly to receive an answer, because, how do you implement AI into an organization without just being a buzzword, but actually using it in a way that adds value to a business, whether it be from a cost perspective or whether it comes from just an efficiency perspective? Are there obvious sort of hacks that you tend to go for that you actually look to offer, or is every case different?
I think every case is different, but often where we will start out is looking at the data. So one of the things I haven't mentioned yet was 12, 18 months ago, Softcat made the first acquisition in our history as a business. Up until this point, all of our growth has been organic, and it's come from our people, our culture, and just doing really well in the market and being amazing at what we do. And we never need to acquire a business before that. We've recently acquired an organisation called Oakland. Oakland has, I think there's about 70 people that sit in Oakland's offices. Almost all of their organisation are data experts. They're data analysts. They're not like salespeople. That's why the marriage with Softcat was such a match made in heaven, because actually you've got our amazing sales engine that maybe lacked Oakland's expertise, and you've got Oakland's expertise, which perhaps lacked Softcat's sales engine. And we knew them well already. They were already doing professional services for our own estate, and we were already partnered with them to sell them into our other organisations. So we knew them incredibly well already, and it just made so much sense. But yeah, that's the type of thing that we've done in order to increase our expertise on data, because actually you can build the greatest infrastructure on the planet. You can have these amazing ideas, but if your back-end data isn't absolutely spot on, if you can't use it as part of a large language model, if you can't inference effectively from that data, like it all falls apart. You get rubbish. You put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. It's the same as it's always been in technology. It's just now with AI.
And because I think what we're seeing is some other sort of traditional managed service providers, really their version of AI is just implementing Copilot or something. So it's good to see, obviously, that you guys have gone that much further. And to be fair, a lot of the NeoClouds are talking about data. And that's some of the bigger issues there. And actually, how much data is going missing and not being utilised is an ongoing problem that's constantly trying to be solved. So obviously, you've got that tenure. You've got your new role. You're focusing on building out the market within the NeoCloud space. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think the NeoCloud space is a market that, if we're going to put our hands up completely, 18 months ago, most people in our business were really unaware of. I think for many out there, it's been this incredible market that is seemingly come out of nowhere. And I think that's a misnomer in itself, because it hasn't. If you look, actually, it's evolved out of organizations like AWS and Azure. But we really had no clue. And we've been very much focused on either on-premise high-performance compute for organizations that could afford it, or we've been focused on working with public cloud providers like AWS and Azure, are massive partners of ours, and we do some brilliant work with them. And I'd say, 18 months ago, I think it came from NVIDIA. They were the ones that said, look, there's these organizations and they're super interesting. They're doing something a little bit different. We're incredibly excited about them. You can imagine the amount of times a vendor comes to us and says, oh, yeah, we're doing something different. We're incredibly excited. And we look into it and it goes nowhere. So I think we approach them with a real skepticism, and that to an extent slowed us down a little bit in terms of creating services, creating propositions, but it slowed us down for the right reasons. Because if we take a skeptical approach to all of these things, easy for me to say, then it actually means when we do go with something, we get it right and we put our resources in the right place. So when we started looking at them, purely as how do we sell into these organizations? Selfishly, being a reseller, like that's where we're most interested in. And we were seeing organizations going out and buying billions in technology. And quite frankly, we thought, want a piece of that. That'd be nice. As that approach has further gone on, we've started to realize what a fantastic opportunity there is, not just to sell into them. And I'll go back to that in a second, because we've built out some bespoke services for NeoClouds. We've got this amazing journey that we can take them on as customers of ours. But also, we started looking at them from a partner perspective, because what we are starting to see, and we started to see this maybe in the past 6 months, is traditional enterprises looking to new ways to adopt AI. It's exactly what you said a minute ago. Buying on-premise infrastructure is so expensive, and some can afford to do it. The big global companies, if you look in the S&P 500, I think last week, I can't remember what healthcare firm it was, but had just announced at GTC £1 billion investment or $1 billion investment into DGX. But for most organizations, that's not possible. So classically, they would have then headed towards the hyperscalers, the AWSs and Azures, but actually that always wasn't necessarily the right approach for them. Sometimes it was too much in terms of the services that could be offered from these hyperscalers. So actually, they would end up overpaying for a service. And I say overpaying kind of in inverted commas. So we're really excited about them from that perspective, because actually it provides this middle ground between owning your own infrastructure all the way through to the hyperscalers. And we're starting to see adoption of their services beginning to take off. If I go back to the services that we can offer NeoCloud organizations, we've got a collection of brilliant managed services for kind of after sales once the kit is deployed and on site, as well as some implementation services that we can offer, and even all the way down to going in with a partner and looking at whether sites are ready to adopt a data center that's ready for high performance compute. So it really breaks down into first and last mile services is how I look at it. And alongside all of that, we can support with the procurement of the infrastructure. We can support with building out software tools that enable the NeoClouds organizations to be successful. But we are trying to be this one-stop holistic shop for NeoCloud organizations looking to build out their practices in the UK, EMEA, USA as well. But right now we're having a lot of success in terms of talking to UK and EMEA-based organizations who are at the start or early phases of their journey of building out their practice.
And so obviously NeoCloud, as you say, it's new, kind of crept up on us to a degree. Jensen's sort of out there trying to offer an alternative to the hyperscalers. So some say waging war. I wouldn't. I wouldn't be so controversial. But he's obviously he's offered an alternative. We've got big giants like CoreWeave that have gone through hyper growth. We've then seen organisations like the Nebiuses and the N-Scales, and there's quite a few more coming in that way. And essentially, it's exactly that. It could be a sovereign cloud. It could be sustainable cloud. They've got all their different sort of things that they're trying to create, I suppose, value and a USP. But essentially, it's infrastructure to enable AI. Which you guys really are, infrastructure software specialists. So actually, the leap from where you guys have been for the last however many years you've been going, I think 20 odd years, maybe more. It really is such an obvious crossover. So, the jump is minimal.
Yeah, absolutely is. I think if you look at the NeoCloud space today, most of you see a lot of commentary on big contracts. And when we talk big, I mean, they are staggeringly big. Yeah, there's news articles in the press of kind of $15 billion contracts.
It's mind-blowing.
Like literally staggers, when you consider that Softcat turns over about $4 billion a year, and then in a single contract, these organizations are going and eclipsing that number. And $4 billion is still a big number, right? So yeah, it's staggering. But those contracts, there's not that many of them, and they're going to dry up eventually. I think Microsoft spent $350 million on building out data centers in this year. Next year, they've committed a further $400 billion. That can't continue. And they're working with the NeoClouds to do that, but that's not sustainable, those kind of figures. For me, the next step in the evolution of NeoCloud organizations is going to be penetrating into that enterprise space. And that's a completely different challenge to the one they face today, because right now, they're working with model builders, with these really, really impressive software organizations. And they're quite happy to go directly to the NeoClouds and have those contracts, and they're complicated and there's so much nuance in them that I don't think there's space for a reseller in that place. But when you're then trying to penetrate into a market of 20,000 enterprises in the UK, not to mention all of the ones in the States, across EMEA as well, it's a completely different conundrum. And that's when you need someone who's going to be trusted by those organizations to be able to provide someone with some sort of reference. And I think that's where they're going to need also staggeringly large sales teams. They will either have to recruit those sales teams themselves, which historically has been too expensive for the ISVs, for the traditional software and hardware vendors, or they're going to have to look to a channel approach. So yeah, that's really where we're perceiving value from ourselves to NeoClouds in terms of that sell with, sell through model, because we are already trading with, I think the figure is about 50% of enterprises in the UK trade with Softcat in some way, shape or form.
That sell through and sell to model, I mean, gives the NeoClouds access to so many exciting prospects. Because you're right, those large deals that we see about in the press, they're few and far between. You know, a lot of the time it's not whoever's been successful in winning it's fantastic, but all the other major NeoClouds were bidding for it as well. So they're all going after the same opportunities. It's not sustainable.
I just don't for me, I look at that, and that if I was within their businesses, I would say it would terrify me, and perhaps that's hyperbolic language to be using, but it is scary. You know, all of your eggs are in one basket if you're going down that route. And yes, the traditional enterprise might not be spending in the same way as those model builders today, but I keep talking to different NeoClouds, keep saying, focus your time on that market now, nurture it, create a brand and a name for yourselves in that space. And in the next 5-10 years, that's going to be when it pays dividends. Now, the problem, I suppose, with that is a lot of these organizations have taken external investments. They can't wait 5 or 10 years. That's too long. But for those that are just coming into inception today, that's where we're finding that conversation's going so well, because we can help structure their very business model from the start. So we're not just working here. And it goes back to what I was saying to you earlier, people bringing us problem statements. It's the exact same thing is happening with NeoClouds. We're speaking to organizations of 10, 15 people, and they're coming to us initially with, can you help us procure this compute or that GPU or whatever it is? And often our salespeople will then push back and go, well, why is that? And we'll start to really draw down into their business model. And that's where we're creating these fantastic connections, where we're helping to drive who it is they're looking at, helping them to pick the right vertical, helping them to pick the right technology that supports that vertical as well, because every single one's different. So if you're going after an organization that's more security conscious, helping make sure that actually all of their marketing, all of their collateral is supported by an underlying infrastructure that is ultimately the most secure in the market, and really building everything with them from that way. Now, that means it's also taken us a hell of a lot of time. It's been quite an adjustment for the sales team, because we've gone from, I think one of the fortunate things about in our space is often the sales cycle's quite quick. Depends what you're selling, but 6 months is considered often a long sales cycle for some of our sellers. Whereas now you're because you're building out people's business plans, you are looking at 18 months, 2 years sometimes, and it's challenging.
Eye-watering deals. And I think this is it. And going back to your point, within the NeoCloud space, what you're seeing is a NeoCloud can secure a contract that could 10x its own valuation, because the deals are that big. But you are right, it is going to change, and towards enterprise opportunities, there's a degree of on-demand, but on-demand obviously has its own risks, but obviously it gets great exposure. So it's an interesting way the market's going to evolve. I think people, like you say, a little bit terrified by it, but it's just a matter of evolution, I think, of how the market's going to change. As we know, AI is here to stay, and we need the infrastructure to do it. It's just watching the evolution, how it progresses, and just with Softcat itself and your support, because, and this is where my own impression of the organisation is wrong, particularly at the time, because I was very UK focused when I used to deal with you guys. You know, the NeoClouds are data centers in the Nordics. They're across the EMEA. They're in the US. You've got the bandwidth to be supporting, you know, not just UK, but across multiple geographies as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I'd say what was our biggest weakness 8-9 years ago has become our biggest strength today. There's a couple of areas in which I think we really excel. Once again, I work for the business. I'm always going to say that, right? Like,
Good salesman.
I'm never going to turn around and be like, oh yeah, we're really rubbish in this space. But I think there's two things that we do well that I'm always really proud to talk to customers about. And equally so, I think our sales team are proud to talk about it as well. And the one is our logistics capabilities. So we've been working with a number of multinational organizations up until this point today to provide high performance compute for different functions, not just AI. There are obviously businesses using high performance compute for a variety of things like quantitative research or medical research, healthcare, etc. We've helped these organizations to deliver into some of the most weird and wonderful parts of the world, and we've done it in incredible ways. Like, I was with one of my colleagues, I can't remember how many weeks ago it was now, and he was saying about how he'd been to visit a data center, and we were just about to deliver quite a large project for them, and he'd taken a tape measure with him to see this data center. He's an absolute, like, loves attention to detail. Which is a great person to have around.
Clearly
you
a
for future reference. Yeah, proper perfectionist. And he knew the heights of the racks that we were putting in, and he went to this data center. He goes, that door looks a little bit small. He takes out a tape measure and he measures it, and nobody has measured the height of the door that we're putting the rack through, and it's about 50 centimeters too small. So he calls it out, and luckily this is 2 weeks before the kit's due to be delivered. And calls it out, and on the same day they'd cut a hole in the door to expand its reach so they could fit these racks through. But you look at what happens if we don't do stuff like that. The kit sat out there in the cold. You're talking £100 million worth of kit potentially sat out in the rainy cold in one of the Scandinavian countries. Like, it's terrible, and it also stops that service going live. It has so many knock-on repercussions just for something as simple as not measuring a door. I've given you the boring example there because actually...
But they are ones that cause problems.
Yeah, and so that's one of the areas, that's one of the two areas where I genuinely think really, really impressive. Just those logistics capabilities. We've saved so many organisations so much money just by knowing what we're doing in that space. And then I think the other one is the way we approach global account management. It's quite unique. We're not the only ones that do this, but I think we do it really well, which is we have one account team that services the globe. We don't care who you're dealing with. That account team gets paid the same on that deal. Yeah. So what this means is it stops infighting between account managers. Like, we've all had it in the industry at some point where you'll be working with someone and actually you now no longer need to deliver that kit in the UK. You need to deliver it in the States. And then you've got two account managers telling you two different ways to deliver that kit. You've got the UK account manager saying, export it from the UK, it's going to be better for you. And you've got the US account manager telling you, no, buy that kit in region, it's going to be better for you. And when you break it down, the reason for that is both teams are trying to get paid on the deal. Yeah, and it's about that.
It is what it is.
And it drives a really negative customer experience. Whereas the way that we do it is we don't care how that kit gets to you, as long as you're happy, the account team get paid equally on that. So whether you're dealing with one of our brilliant account managers out in the States or Singapore or Netherlands or the UK, it doesn't matter. We prioritise that deal in the same way, and it guarantees no infighting, which is all about driving the best customer experience possible. That's at the heart of everything we do, always.
Absolutely. And just thinking of the future, so obviously this is a relatively new market for you to step into, but one that's obviously you guys are comfortable with. You've got the experience to go and deliver successfully. You're not the only ones. It's very competitive. So you've got the likes of WWT and Computer Center that are also trying to get into that market space as well. How do you see the industry going for yourself and really the overall sort of mission and goal over the next sort of 12, 18 months?
I think I see it in the same way as I always see the reseller space as a whole, which is we will win some and we will lose some. You know, you named two brilliant organisations there, like really know what they're doing. I've got a fantastic pedigree in the space, and there's more as well.
Yep.
Like because of the amount of money that's been spent in this space, it's going to attract more and more people. So we're not naive enough to think we are the greatest thing since sliced bread and that we're going to win every single deal that crosses our plate. Don't be wrong. I'd love to. If you offered it to me today, I'd bite your hand off, but it's not a realistic expectation. What we will aim to do is the same thing we've been doing in the enterprise space for the best part of 30 years, which is we will go in and we will try and deliver an amazing customer experience. We'll let a lot of our culture do the talking. And I don't mean, you know, the fun parties and nights out and stuff. What our culture does is empower our people to really care about the organisations they deal with.
Yeah.
And when they care, I think that comes across, and I think that's unique for salespeople. Let's be honest, salespeople don't get the greatest rep, and particularly tech salespeople don't get brilliant rep. And
try recruitment consultants.
I didn't want to say. But I think, you know, part of the reason for that is there's such a short cycle on these people in their career. They will be at an organisation. Often we see it for kind of 2 years and then we'll move on. So they only care about this really short time frame where they don't want to build a relationship with that customer. They don't really care about the outcomes of whether what they're delivering performs on those outcomes. They just want the deal. They want the gross profit or the revenue. They want to get paid their commission. Then they want to disappear. Everything we do is all the opposite of that. We want to drive this really strong relationship. And some of the nicest stories I've heard of like where salespeople have gone to like people they've met as a customer and ended up being their best friends. And like, I was with someone the other day and they'd gone to their customer's wedding. Like they'd known them for the best part of 10 years. He was like, talk to this person more than I speak to my wife about, you know.
It does feel like that sometimes, doesn't it?
Like, so that's what we want to try and do. And it's the same in this space. Like, we just want to generate really good relationships where we're adding value and delivering something special into, at the moment, it's that NeoCloud community. And we believe if we do that well, and if we care for people, we understand their outcomes, understand what's important to them, and ultimately go and do an absolute impeccable job, that will mean that the business takes care of itself. And that's how we've sustained 25 years of growth. And to be honest, until that stops working, at some point, maybe it will stop working. But right now, in an age where people rely more on technology, more on AI, more on automated systems, I still very much feel like that human touch is what separates us. Saying to my fiance about it last night, chatting about this. I was very nervous coming in to do the podcast.
So clearly, don't worry about that.
I was, and so I was like, what am I going to speak about? And we were talking about, even as a everyday consumer, what your engagement is. And I was saying, I'd never bought something on Amazon for over £1,000. And that's staggering because I buy everything on Amazon. I love it. It's brilliant with Prime and the next day. But I've never purchased an item over £1,000. And I was saying to her, I realised that's because there is no human touch for me. There's no interaction. There's no personalisation. So it's great for all of the transactional, all of the reactive stuff that I need in my life. And it does a great job there. But anytime I want to buy something more expensive, I'll go to an Apple store or I'll go to John Lewis or I'll go to somewhere.
They can see it. You can talk to somebody.
Touch it, feel it, make sure it's the right thing for me. It's not just my decision. I've got someone there who genuinely knows what they're talking about and cares about my happiness, driving the right outcome. I don't see why it's any different for business. If an organisation is spending 50, 100 million pounds on hardware or software or on a solution, it's so important that they feel like you care about that engagement as much as they do. And if you don't, they'll find you out and they'll go somewhere else.
So in summary then, the reason why NeoClouds should be talking to Softcat is you've got the professional services side of things, deployments, installs. You've got a managed servicing offering over the top of that. You've got a procurement offering where you can go out and source certain hardware, whether it be GPUs, whatever. And then it's that service piece, isn't it? So it's that service piece. And then obviously, phase two, or maybe you're ready now, it's that sell to sort of model where you're going to give them potentially access to all these sort of enterprise customers potentially, once all these ginormous deals that we keep talking about sort of potentially dry up or become even more scarce. But that's pretty much where you guys are positioning yourself and putting service at really the forefront and the heart of all of that.
Yeah, always is. And that phase 2 is already live.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already working with one organisation, but definitely room for multiple others. I think that's somewhere where we will look to expand to a limited point of view, but we are starting to see that enterprise demand starting to trickle through, and it's often in POC environments. They're starting to test. That's what's getting me really excited, because the testing's going to lead into acquisition. I was reading, I've started getting into a really old-fashioned habit where I read a physical paper at the weekend. God, I'm sounding boring even for myself here.
Before your time now.
This is definitely going to get cut. But I was reading the paper, and they were saying that organisations where AI was a core part of what they do, and they publicly talked about that, the valuation of those businesses, I think, had grown by 125%. Whereas organisations where they didn't publicly talk about AI as a core component of their business in the same time period, they had only grown by 25%.
Really?
This is why companies are so desperate. They're not just doing it because they see the value. They're doing it because their consumers perceive the value. The people investing in their businesses perceive the value. And so it's no longer a choice, not for me, not for any serious CEO. It's now almost an absolute must. But what they also have to do is understand what it's going to deliver. You can't just do what you were talking about at the start, where phone someone up and go, I want to do AI. And unfortunately, that conversation does still sometimes happen. Yeah.
It definitely does happen. Well, look, this has been fantastic. I'm really excited to see what happens with Softcat over the next sort of 18 months, 2 years, and see where you guys are in the market and the successes. So we'll have you back. But this has been really good, and looking forward to, never know, maybe my daughter might be involved as well.
Yeah, always room for more people on the graduate scheme, particularly good people who are driven.
Brilliant. Well, look, it's been great. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, brilliant. Cheers, Nick. Thank you.
And that's it for this week's episode of Humans in AI. A huge thanks to my guests for sharing their insights, and to you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to hit follow, share it with someone in your network, and let me know what you think. There's plenty more coming this season as we dive deeper into the people, the companies, and the ideas shaping AI right now. See you next time.